and then I will get the presentation up and going here. Okay, can everybody see that okay? Somebody want to chime in, unmute and chime in, make sure they can see it?
I can see it. Looks
All
fine.
right, very good. Thank you. All right, so today our presentation is about small business planning during the virus crisis. Again, my name's Mark Lankford. CBA stands for Certified Business Advisor. So the purpose of today's webinar is not necessarily to tell you about loan programs, but to tell you how to navigate planning through the crisis, whether or not you are able to get funds for from the government for that purpose. So the first step that we want to talk about as far as navigating through the crisis is, and again, I'd ask you if you can mute your microphones unless if you can, please, and type your questions into the chat box. The first thing you want to do is you want to obey the government's orders during this crisis. So if you've been ordered to shut down for some reason or requested to, you want to go ahead and do that. You don't want to add any fines or penalties to already large list of liabilities that you're going to incur during this crisis. And these are kind of strange times right now. There's people actually driving around and calling police on establishments that have too many people in them and so forth. So it's not a time to try to get away with something. So, if the government's ordered you to close your business, the best rule of thumb there to avoid fines and penalties is just go ahead and obey those orders. So once you've made that decision, the next step is you want to prioritize your liabilities. Everybody's got bills that are still coming in while we're shut down, and the government may have shut you down completely, or you may be partially shut down just due to circumstances. But what you want to do is take your liabilities and figure out which ones must you pay right away, and which ones can you get away with putting off. Two of the largest liabilities you're going to have are rent and utilities. And these seem critical at the time. If I don't pay my rent, I'm going to get kicked out. If I don't pay my business utilities, they're going to shut me off. But during a crisis like this, nobody's going to be evicted or have their utilities shut off during this time of crisis. I know in the Dayton area, the utility company has said that they're suspending cutoffs, and then also the eviction courts are not evicting anybody right now. So even though we're a little bit more than a month into this, you can put those aside for now as far as a critical expense, and we'll talk about later what you need to do to make sure that they don't become critical later on. So having been reassured that, you look at what truly has to be paid. If you have employee benefit programs, you want to keep those going because they're going to be very hard to get restarted. If you have an essential software service that your business is based on, you want to make sure that you keep that subscription going or that payment made. And then if you have a key supplier or several key suppliers, you want to make sure that those are continued to be paid while we're in this crisis. What you want to do is you want to separate your discretionary expenses from critical, which vendors will work with you and which won't. You're going to find out pretty quickly once you reach out to these people who's willing to work out a deal with you and who will not work out a deal with you, and make sure you record that for future reference. But you want to make sure that if there's something or some vendor who just will not work with you and you have to get them paid, you want to move them up on the priority. But you also want to look at them in the long run and say, do I need to replace them, because these are not people who are going to work for me. Discretionary expenses, advertising, things that you need, office supplies and so forth, you may want to distinguish them from critical expenses at this point. Next, we want to talk about being proactive. During this time, most of us are working from our homes or stuck at our houses, but this is not a time just to sit around. You want to contact your lenders, your landlords, your creditors, your vendors, your employees, and your customers and stakeholders. Let them know that you're working on things. The worst thing you can do right now is not communicate with these people, because there's all sorts of doubt going on? Are they still in business? Do they have any intention of paying me? If you fail to communicate with these people, they start to wonder, and that's how rumors get started. So be proactive, reach out to them, reach out to your lender. Most lenders are working out some sort of loan deferment plan, especially if it's an SBA loan. So talk to your lender, call your banker and talk to them. Your landlord, very few people are able to pay business rent in a place like this, and especially if you've been shut down by the government. So reach out to them, find out if you can make a minimal or no payment or just abate the rent for now. Look at it from the landlord standpoint. They can't evict you right now, and if they try to and you move out, then they are going to be stuck with, nobody's going to be renting during the crisis, and then they have to go find a new tenant after the crisis is over. So they have a keen interest in keeping you in place. Most landlords don't want their tenants to go out of business, so reach out to them and see if you can work out a deal. Creditors, you may find yourself in a position where you have to make a minimal payment on a credit card at this point. But if so, you do that. With vendors, negotiate terms. If you're net 15 right now, see if they'll do net 30 or net 45. Your employees, you want to let them know if you have alternate services available for them to buy your product or service. You want to let them know about it. Your customers, that is. And your employees, you want to, even if you've laid them off, you want them to know you're thinking about them, and that you will bring them back as soon as you can. So, and let them know what you're doing to work on things. So the key to that is to stay engaged, stay in communication with people, and remember to ask for these considerations: interest-only payments, deferred payments, extended net terms, abated rent, etc. If you don't ask for these things, then you're probably not going to get them. So, the first rule of thumb, ask for these concessions. Next tip for surviving the crisis would be to conserve cash. Just because you have the money in your account right now to pay a bill doesn't mean you should. When this all ends, and it will, and at some point, you're going to need operating capital to get the business restarted. You're going to need money, much like a startup business. So if you burn through that money now, paying bills that don't necessarily have to be paid, once you spend $1, you don't have it anymore. So what you want to do is use credit cards, whatever you can, to buy time. So anything you can do, delayed payment options, minimal payments, utilizing lines of credit, whatever you can do to buy time. So, the question is, well, how much time will I need? Well, nobody knows for sure, because nobody knows how long this crisis is going to last. But in my opinion, I would say you would need somewhere between 30 and 90 days, with that period having started in mid-March. So 30 to 90 days would cover to April to May to mid-June. And then at that point, you have to assume things are going to change, because if we're still locked down in our homes and businesses are shut in mid-June, there's going to be a bigger problem that has to be resolved than just surviving this momentary crisis. So basically, 3 months is what I'm thinking is going to be the maximum. If it's longer than that, I'll be on here with some more strategies for survival. And then just remember, yes, we have a question? Okay. The other thing, I want to use extreme caution in making major decisions at this point. In a time of crisis, it's not the time to make a major decision, whether it's to sell or to expand your business, unless it's something where you've pivoted or otherwise taking advantage of the situation where there's a demand and capitalizing on that. I threw two obvious examples out there, but your business is kind of in a hold pattern right now, so it's not the time to think, well, this is just too much hassle, I think I'll just sell it. Buyers are not going to be too keen on making major decisions at this point, so it's not the best time to sell your business. The situation is changing pretty rapidly. So I know we've distributed a lot of information about SBA relief programs that are available and what's going on right now. Sometimes a deal sounds really good at first, but it could change tomorrow. And right now, even today, I'm dealing with a situation where part of the SBA loan program may be changing. So, you want to act quickly, but you want to know that that the situation is changing. And remember, that both the EIDL program and the payroll protection program are loans. Some of them, both of them, have forgiveness options for portions of it. Forgiveness meaning they give you the money and you do not have to pay them back. But generally, most all of them have some aspects where you will have to pay those loans back. So as you weigh a decision whether or not to apply for these SBA programs, be cognizant of the fact that these are loans that you're going to have to pay back at some point. And it's even though the loans are deferred, I believe up to 12 months on EIDL, you will have to start making payments, and you have to look at, am I in a position where my business can take on additional debt, even if it's 1 year down the line. And watch out for rumors. A lot of rumors going around saying, well, don't worry about it. The government will forgive the whole loan. I would be very wary of that. They're not saying that yet, and there's a good chance they won't say that, because I don't think there's enough money just to give away and forgive all the debt. So if you hear rumors to that effect, check with us and make sure that you're very wary of those type of rumors. Next step in being strategic with how you manage your budget during this crisis is to check with your commercial insurance carrier. Many of you may have business interruption coverage that will help pay for lost revenue during this period. There's no way of telling. Each insurance policy is different for each business. Best thing you do is contact your agent and see if you have that coverage. Then the other things you want to check on are, can you get deferred payments or reduced premium payments during an ordered shutdown? It stands to reason, if you're, say a restaurant, you've been shut down completely, that lowers your liability exposure. So obviously from an insurance company standpoint, there's no need to charge you a full monthly premium if you're paying that way if your liability is not there. So again, if you don't ask, you don't get. So you want to check with that and see. Same goes with payroll with furloughed workers. If you've laid them off temporarily or have them working from home, does that change the insurance payments that your company is incurring? So the best thing to do is find your commercial real estate agent and contact him or her and ask them these questions. Next step in being strategic is knowing your break-evens. So a break-even is how much revenue that you can bring in and what they call keep the lights on. So keep everything, cover all your expenses and overhead while you're operating, and any cost of goods sold that's still left during a reduced revenue period. So you should know how to do that. If you don't, contact your SBDC advisor and have them help you figure that out. You should have had a pre-quarantine idea of where your break-even is. What you're going to have to do is recalculate that break-even based on changes in payroll, rent, and other major expenses that you've made while this crisis is going on. So you take any reduced expenses and factor those in, and then factor in what your revenue is, and try to plot that out in a cash flow and make sure that you can get by at least 3 months under that type of situation, or at least see what type of revenue you need to bring in to make it to that point. Next, we're going to talk about seriously evaluating your payroll. How critical is it for you to keep non-essential employees on the payroll? Are they highly skilled or low skilled and easily replaced? In a lot of cases, we have a lot of companies who are paying highly skilled employees basically just to sit home. There's a lot of them that just can't work. For example, my son-in-law is a welder. He can't do his work at home, but it's a highly skilled position for the company he works for. So they're willing to pay him just to keep him on the payroll. And obviously they would be interested in the Payroll Protection Act that would help them cover his salary while he's at home. An opposite case would be somebody with lower skilled employees who, basically they're going to come out just as well if you lay them off and if you keep them on the payroll, and then, you bring them back or rehire new people when this is all over, because there's not going to be a large training expense involved with that. So it's a case by case decision, but look at it and see if it's better for your company to lay people off than to keep them on the payroll. And what I've said here in the second bullet point, there's no shame in laying people off in the current crisis. It's an economic decision. These are events that were not your fault that led to this. So, I'm not asking you to be heartless, but to make good, smart business decisions. And don't keep people on the payroll. Don't take a loan to keep people on the payroll if you think they will be better off being temporarily laid off. And I know a lot of clients worry about how is this going, maybe they've never laid an employee off before. How is this going to affect my experience rate? And I'm kind of counting on common sense to rule in this situation. I don't think the state is going to impose experience rates on companies that had to lay people off during this crisis. So another tip, you want to follow what we call generally accepted accounting procedures, GAAP, as far as handling transactions, journalizing transactions for your business while this crisis is going on. One of the main things you're going to see, especially for small business owners, is they're going to have to infuse capital or money into their business, possibly out of their personal funds. So this crisis is going to have pretty big tax implications. So you want to make sure that you're consulting with your accountant or bookkeeper, and that make sure that any capital you infuse into your business is handled properly or journalized properly for tax purposes, because you don't want to pay a tax penalty or pay too much taxes for mishandling how you put money back into the business to keep the business afloat. Our last tip we're going to talk here a little bit about is filing your business taxes. Whether you have money to pay taxes or not, file them. The biggest concern I know in the state of Ohio is sales tax. Do I pay my sales tax? Well, I didn't have any sales. Well, if you didn't have any sales, you still want to file with zeros if you have to. But the worst thing you can do is not file your taxes. If you don't file your taxes, the assumption is, well, they went out of business or something happened. We better contact them and see what happens. So if you file and pay what you can if you owe, and if you can't pay the whole thing, pay what you can, and count on being able to work out things later. So keep your filings up to date as much as possible if you can. So a lot of this, especially when we got into the area of talking about calculating your business's break even, we mentioned talking to your SBDC advisor. There's an SBDC here in Dayton, obviously, but if you're watching the recorded version of this that'll go out through the country, you can go to americassbdc.org, at that website, and you can search out what the closest SBDC center is to where your business is. So I encourage you to seek their help in making those strategic plans. So I'm going to stop the screen share right now, and I'm going to invite anybody that has a question to unmute themselves, and I assume that our chat box has been keeping up with the questions, but if you have would like to verbally ask me a question, go ahead and unmute yourself. You do that by taking your cursor down to that lower left-hand corner and just click on that microphone, and that'll unmute you. So do we have any questions? Okay, no questions. Somebody type me in a question on a chat box. I know I wasn't that good. I know I didn't cover all the areas. Any questions I can answer regarding that? Kim, did you have anything you wanted to add to the presentation?
No, you did a really good job, Mark. I'm trying to I cannot think of anything. I was wondering if you have any other examples of without naming names, of some things that you've been seeing businesses do to manage this crisis?
Yeah, I think the primary strategy that most people are doing is first thing they're doing is they're contacting their landlord. Business rent, business lease is one of your biggest liabilities, and I think most landlords are going to be reasonable. If you just approach them, say, I need deferred rent, I need you to skip a month or two rent for me so that I can get through this. Most of them are going to be reasonable. They don't want you to go out of business, because if you go out of business, you move out, now they have to fill the spot, which means additional months of no rent for them. If you have a landlord that absolutely refuses to give you a pass on a month or two of rent, then talk to them about some minimal rent. Maybe you pay 10% or 20% of it, and then if you pay a little bit towards a bill, that's going to go a long way legally, because at some point here this is going to end, and then you're going to have to pay up what you owe or continue on with your vendors and your landlords. So if you've made some sort of effort to pay during this crisis, it's going to look awful good for you and awful bad for them if they're going to try to evict you or foreclose on you after the fact. So I think being proactive, asking for the best possible scenario, and then if you have to, negotiating for what you can find in between is better. And then also, look at your internal or already existing options. If you have a line of credit, use that if you have to. Credit cards are a big thing. Most every small business has a credit card company, a credit card account. Go ahead and use that and make the minimum payment if you have to. This is the first time I think I've ever given that advice, but make the minimum payment if you have to, just to get by and buy that time. Because the key is, we need 30 to 90 days. You got to get past that period. So if you can do that, that's great. And then the third thing is, be careful with these SBA programs. They're changing rapidly. The terms are changing rapidly. Go ahead and apply, but look at them carefully and remember that they are loans that will have to be repaid coming out of this. As small business owners, you may find yourself in a position where you as a person have to infuse capital into your business rather than to take a loan. If you have to do that, that's not a bad idea. Just like I said, make sure from an accounting standpoint it's journalized correctly so that it goes on record that you've put the money into the business. Okay, we have a question from Tim on how the terms are changing on the SBA loans. One of the things that happened with the Payroll Protection Act was, they decided that they would forgive up to 8 weeks of the payroll, and then when that starts, it starts from the time of the loan. But then also they changed it so that, for example, certain employer portions and other parts of payroll taxes are not covered with that. So, you want to remember that even though you're getting money to keep people on payroll, you may still have to pay some of the payroll taxes from withholding and such. So, things like that. And go ahead, Kim.
So the terms, I would say that they're refining them as they go along. So right. When we first got it, they said it was 0.5%, and now it's 0.1% for the PPP. The EIDL has stayed pretty consistent, but now we're hearing some things about the advance. When we first heard it, it was $10,000, and now I'm hearing up to $10,000. So I don't know what that means. So it's just something to keep track of. We are putting out content on our site. Is whenever we hear something that's changed, we're constantly contacting people, and we're putting up things on our website. So keep checking with that. I'd say today we haven't heard any big change except that wording with the EIDL up to $10,000. So, and I would also recommend that everybody apply for both of them if you can. The other thing is because you don't have to take it. That gives you an option later. So if you apply for it and you decide you don't need it, then you're okay. But if you find out later that you do need it and you could have saved some time by applying, I just think that's a great idea. So
I would agree. And to Kim's point, there's a queue, especially with the payroll protection, where you're going through banks and lenders. There's a very large volume of applicants right now. So the longer you wait, in one respect, the longer you wait, the further back in line that you are. So to her point also, you can always change your mind or decline the loan, but nobody's going to act on your application until you submit it. So it might be a good idea to submit it, but then do some careful thinking before you make the final decision to accept it or not. So a good point there. Basically, and both programs are to get you money, but you have to remember having money is only half the problem. Applying the money correctly to bills and invoices that really need to be paid, that's what's going to separate those that come out of this successful and those who don't make it. If you get the money and spend it on the wrong thing, that there's no way to go back and change that. So that's why the purpose of this presentation is just to give you some guidance and some hints on exactly whether you're getting the loan proceeds or you're using your own capital, how to successfully and strategically choose which bills to pay and which not to pay, or at least pay partial on them. Do we have any other questions?
I don't see any more. It was a very informational, Mark. Does anybody else? Did I just hear someone unmute? No? Yeah. And Mark has recorded this, so we will post it. So if you want to go back and look at it, and we'll also send out PDFs of the slides so you can go back and refresh your memory as well.
All right. And you're of course welcome, Brett. You're welcome, everybody. And contact the SBDC if we can help you guide through this. Obviously, we're going to give a lot of preference to existing businesses, make sure they can navigate their way through this, and think about every bill before you pay it, every invoice. Is this a high priority or not? And conserve that cash, because you are going to need that cash when this is all over. So anything you can do to buy time, and it seems crazy, why am I sitting on this money and just paying partial bills? But remember, you want to put yourself in a position to restart when this is over. So it's not just about surviving the next month or so. It's about being in a position to restart once it's over. And the more cash you have on hand, the better that's going to happen, or more likely that's going to happen. All right. Okay, we do have a question here. I want to triple check on your comments related to essential businesses. My business is currently being done from my home safely. No concerns there. If you can operate from home and still be able to bill people for that and get income from that, then no problems at all. And a lot of people are in the position I'm in. I'm coming to you from my home in Cincinnati. So if you can, whether you're essential or not, if you can operate out of your home, as long as you're not seeing customers aren't coming into your home, you should be okay. If you're able to do that, it doesn't matter whether you're essential or not at that point. It's because you're working from home, so you're not transporting anywhere. So yes, if by all means you can move certain aspects of your business to virtual, do that. I know sometime this weekend I have an eye exam that's virtual, and I'm really interested in seeing how that goes. But I'm not sure how that works. But LensCrafters got me on a remote eye exam, so any way you can move your business to virtual, please do that. Keep going that way. And hopefully you attended our pivot webinar earlier today, or if not, check out the recorded version of that. It's some good information on how to change your business around during this time and keep it going and viable while we're all in quarantine situation here.
Okay, thanks, Mark. We are going to, I haven't posted all the videos yet, but I will get those posted probably tomorrow morning or this evening or something. So.
All right. Well, thank you, Kim, and thank you, everybody, for coming. And be sure and contact your SBDC if we can help you further. But think smart, be smart business owners while this is going on, and hopefully we'll see you on the other side of this. So,
and if you all could complete our survey, I'd really appreciate it. I dropped the link into the comments box.
Oh, I didn't see it, Cindy. Oh, there it is. Okay, it's there.
Thank you very much. And yes, if you can, please copy, paste that link or click on it and respond to our survey. Your input on our webinar is very much valued. So thank you very much, everybody. I'll stop the recording here and